Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. We are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 12, Text 25. Jai Srila Gurudev, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay. The child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, a performer of many Ashwamedh horse sacrifices, and a follower of the old and experienced men. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Bali Maharaj, one of the 12 authorities in the devotional service of the Lord, Bali Maharaj is a great authority in the devotional service because he sacrificed everything to please the Lord and relinquished the connection of his so called spiritual master who obstructed him on the path of risking everything for the service of the Lord. The highest perfection of religious life is to attain to the stage of unqualified devotional service of the Lord without any cause or without being obstructed by any kind of worldly obligation. Let me check if I'm not on mute. Yeah, I'm not. Okay. Bali Maharaj was determined to give up everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. He did not care for any obstruction whatsoever. He is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, another authority in the devotional service of the Lord. Bali Maharaj and the history of his dealings of Vishnu Vaman Deva are described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhavatam 11 to 24. Prahlad Maharaj, a perfect devotee of Lord Krishna Vishnu, his father Hiranyakashipu chastised him severely when he was only 5 years old for his becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. He was the first son of Hiranyakashipu and his mother's name was Kayadhu. Prahlad Maharaj was an authority in the devotional service of the Lord because he had his father killed by Lord Narasimhadev, setting the example that even a father should be removed from the path of devotional service if such a father happens to be an obstacle. He had 4 sons, and the eldest son, Virochana, is the father of Bali Maharaj, mentioned above. The history of the Prahlad Maharaj's activities is described in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, text 26. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. Srila Prabhupada's purport: the wisest man in the world is the devotee of the Lord. The sages are called wise men, and they are different types of wise men for different branches of knowledge. Unless, therefore, the king of the head of the state is the wisest man, he cannot control all types of wise men in the state. In the line of royal succession in the family of Maharaj Yudhishthira, all the kings, without exception, were the wisest men of their times. And so also it was foretold by Maharaj Parikshit and his son Maharaj Janmejaya, who was yet to be born. Such wise king can become chastisers for upstarts and uprooters of Kali or quarrelsome elements. As we will be clear in the chapters ahead, Maharaj Parikshit wanted to kill the personified Kali who was attempting to kill a cow, the emblem of peace and religion. The symptoms of Kali are wine, women, gambling, and slaughterhouse. Wise rulers of all states from Maharaj Parikshit in how to maintain should take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit in how to maintain peace and morality by subduing the upstarts and quarrelsome people who indulge in wine, illicit connection with women, gambling, and meat eating supplied by regularly maintained slaughterhouses. In the age of Kali, regular license is issued for maintaining all of these different departments of coral. So how can they expect peace and morality in the state? The state fathers, therefore, must follow the principles of becoming wiser by devotion to the Lord, by chastising the breaker of discipline, and by uprooting the symptoms of quarrel, as mentioned above. If we want blazing fire, we must use dry fuel. Blazing fire and moist fuel go ill together. Peace and Morality can prosper only by the principles of Maharaj Parikshit and his followers. If you want blazing fire, we must use dry fuel. Why would Srila Prabhupada mention this here? The state fathers and reformers principles become wiser by chastising the break of discipline. Prudence. Okay, one has to be hard. One has to be like strict in punishing. I think so. Hmm. Text 27. After hearing about his death, which will be caused by a bite of snake bird sent by some son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachments and surrender unto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. Shri purport. Material attachment and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord go ill together. Material attachment means ignorance of transcendental happiness under the shelter of the Lord. Devotional service to the Lord while existing in the material world is to practice one's transcendental relation with the Lord, and when it is matured, one gets completely free from material attachment and becomes competent to go back home, back to Godhead. Maharaj Parikshit, being specially attached to the Lord from the beginning of his body in the womb of his mother, was continuously under the shelter of the Lord. And so called warning of his death within 7 days from the date of the curse by Brahmana's son, and was a boon to him to enable him to prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. Since he was always protected by the Lord, he could have avoided this effect of such a curse by the grace of the Lord. But he did not take such undue advantage for nothing. Rather, he made the best use of a bad bargain. For 7 days continuously, he heard Srimad Bhavatam from right source, and thus he got the shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord for that opportunity. Text 28. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be the great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Material knowledge means ignorance of the knowledge of one's own self. Material knowledge means ignorance of the knowledge of one's own self. Philosophy means to seek after right knowledge of one's own self, or the knowledge of self-realization. Without self-realization, philosophy is dry speculation or a waste of time and energy. Srimad Bhagavatam gives the right knowledge of one's own self, and by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can get free from material attachment and enter into the kingdom of fearlessness. The material world is fearfulness. If its prisoners are always fearful as within a prison house. In a prison house, no one can violate the jail rules and regulations, and violating the rules means another term or extension of prison life. Similarly, we in the material existence are always fearful. Fearfulness is called anxiety. Everyone in the material life, in all species and variety of life, in full of anxieties, either by breaking or without breaking the law of nature. Liberation or mukti means getting relief from the constant anxieties. This is possible only when the anxieties change to devotional service of the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam gives us the chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. This is done in the association of a learned philosopher like the self-realized Sri Shukdev Goswami. The great son of Vyasadeva, Maharaj Parikshit, after receiving warning of his death, took advantage of his opportunity by associating with Shri Shukdev Goswami and achieved the desired results. There is a sort of imitation of this recitation and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam by professional men, and the foolish audience thinks they will get free from the clutches of material attachment and attain life of fearlessness. Such imitative hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is caricature only, and one should not be misled by such a performance of Bhagavad Satta undertaken by ridiculous greedy fellows to maintain an establishment of material enjoyment. Text 29. Thus, those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed Maharaj Yudhishthir about the future history of his child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Vedas are the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. But such knowledge aims at perfection of self-realization. In other words, the Vedas are guides for the civilized man in every respect. Since human life is the opportunity to get free from all material miseries, it is properly guided but the knowledge of Vedas. In the matter of both material needs and spiritual salvation, the specific intelligent class of men who were devoted particularly to the knowledge of the Vedas were called Vipras, or the graduates of the Vedic knowledge. There are different branches of knowledge in the Vedas, of which astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. So the intelligent men, generally known as Brahmanas, took up all the different branches of Vedic knowledge to guide society. Even the Department of Military Education, Dhanurveda, was also taken up by intelligent men, and the Vipras were also teachers of the section of the knowledge with Dronacharya, Kripacharya, etc. The word Vipra mentioned here is significant. There is a little difference between Vipras and Brahmanas. The Vipras are those who are expert in Karma Kanda of fruitive activities, guiding the society towards fulfilling the material necessities of life, whereas the Brahmanas are expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence. The department of knowledge is called Jnana Kanda, and above this there is the Upasana Kanda. The culmination of Upasana Kanda is the devotional service of the Lord Vishnu, and when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. Vishnu worship is the highest of the modes of worship. Sorry, Krishna. And when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. Vishnu worship is the highest mode of worship. Elevated Brahmanas are Vaishnavas engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And the Srimad Bhavatam, which is the science of devotional service, is very dear to the Vaishnavas. And as explained in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is a mature fruit of Vedic knowledge and is a superior subject matter. Above the three kandas, namely karma, jnana, upasana. Among the karma kanda expertly, the Jataka karma Vipras were good astrologers. Among the karma kanda experts, the Jataka karma expert Vipras were good astrologers who could tell about the future history of the born child simply by the astral calculations of the time lagna. Such expert Jataka Vipras were present during the birth of Parikshit Maharaj. And his father Yudhishthira Maharaj awarded the Vipras sufficiently with gold, land, villages, grains, and other valuable necessities of life, which also include cows. There is a need of such Vipras in the social future, and it is duty of the state to maintain them comfortably as designed in the Vedic procedure. Such expert Vipras, being sufficiently paid by the state, could give free service to the people in general, and thus the Department of Vedic Knowledge could be available for all. Text 30. His son would become famous in the world as Parikshit examiner because he would come to examine all living beings in his search after the personality who he saw before his birth. Thus, he would come to constantly contemplate him. His son would become whose son? Parikshit's son. Maharaj Parikshit, fortunate as he was, Srila Prabhupada's purport, got the impression of the Lord even in the womb of the mother, and thus his contemplation on the Lord was constantly with him. Once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget him in any circumstance. Child Parikshit, after coming out of the womb, was in the habit of examining everyone to see whether he was the same personality whom he saw first saw in the womb. But no one could be equal to or more attractive than the Lord, and therefore he never accepted anyone. But the Lord was constantly with him by such examination, and thus Maharaj Parikshit was always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord by remembrance. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks in this connection that every child, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, certainly becomes a great devotee of Lord like Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, very important. One may not be as fortunate as Maharaj Parikshit to have the opportunity to see the Lord in the womb of his mother, but even if he is not so fortunate, he can be made so if the parents of the child desire him to be so. There is a practical example in my personal life in this connection. My father was a pure devotee of Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, my father gave me a couple forms of Radha Krishna in a playful manner. I used to worship these deities along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performance of neighboring temple of Radha Govinda by constantly visiting his neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities to play. I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. My father used to observe all the ceremonies befitting my position. Later on, these activities were suspended due to my association in the schools and colleges, and I became completely out of practice. But in my youthful days, when I met my spiritual master, Sri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, again I revived my old habit. Wow. I met Srimad Srila Bhakti Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. Again, I revived my whole habit, and the same playful deities became my worshipful deities in proper regulation. This was follow up until I left the family connection. This was followed up until I left the family connection, and I am pleased that my generous father gave the first impression, which was developed later into regulated devotion service by his divine grace. Prahlad Maharaj also advised that such impressions of a godly relation must be impregnated from the beginning of the child. Otherwise, one may miss the opportunity of the human form of life, which is very valuable, although it is temporary like others. Text 31. As the moon in the waxing fortnight develops day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly. What's luxuriantly? In luxury. Just think it's luxury. Under the care and full facility of the guardian grandfathers. Text 32. Just at this time, Maharaj Yudhishthir was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from the sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen, but he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside the fine and tax collection. Shiva Pasupar. As the Brahmanas and Vipras had the right to be subsidized by the state executive had to collect to right to collect taxes and fines from the citizens. After the Battle of Kurukshetra, the state treasury was exhausted, and therefore there was no surplus fund except to the fund from the tax collections and fines. Such funds were sufficient only for the state budget, and there was no excess fund. The king was anxious to get more wealth in some other way in order to perform the house sacrifice. Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to perform this sacrifice under the instructions of Bhishma Dev. Text 33. Undertaking the hearty wishes of king, his brothers, advised by the infallible Lord Shri Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north left by King Maruta. Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Maruta. I love this, Srila Prabhupada. Someone's name comes first time, and it's because it's first canto, and we even like um, at the start there was only first canto. Srila Prabhupada mentions everything, like who is Maharaj Maruta and why did his gold was left. So you are not confused. We are not confused. Wow, Srila Prabhupada is perfect. Maharaj Maruta, one of the great emperors of the world, he reigned over the world long before the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was the son of Maharaj Avikshit and was a great devotee and the son of the sun god known as devotee of the son of the sun god known as Yamraj. His brother Samvarta was a rival priest of the great Brihaspati. Oh, the learned priest of the demigods. He conducted one sacrifice called Shankara Yajna, by which the Lord was satisfied that he was pleased to hand over him the charge of the mountain peak of gold. The peak of gold is somewhere in the Himalaya mountains, and modern adventurers may try to find it there. He was so powerful an emperor that at the day's end of sacrifice, the gods, demigods from the other planets like Indra, Chandra, Brihaspati used to visit his palace. And because he had the gold peak at his disposal, he had sufficient gold in his possession. The canopy of the sacrificial altar was completely made of gold. In his daily performance of sacrificial ceremonies, some of the inhabitants of Vayuloka early planets were invited to expedite the cooking work of the ceremony. And the assembly of the demigods in the ceremony was led by Vishwadeva. By his constant pious work, he was able to drive out the kinds of diseases from the jurisdiction of his kingdom. All the inhabitants of higher planets like Devaloka, Pitraloka were pleased with him for the great sacrificial ceremonies. Every day he used to give in charity to learned brahmanas such things as bedding, seats, conveyances, sufficient quantities of gold, because of the munificent charities and performance and immovable sacrifices. The king of heaven, Indradev, was fully satisfied with him and always wished for his welfare. Due to his pious activity, he remained a young man throughout his life and reigned over the world for 1000 years, surrounded by his satisfied subjects, ministers, legitimate wife, sons, and brothers. Even Lord Sri Krishna praised his spirit of pious activities. He handed over his only daughter Maharshi Angira to Maharshi Angira. Okay. So he gave his daughter to Maharshi Angira. And by his good blessings, he was elevated to the kingdom of heaven. First of all, he wanted to offer the priesthood of his sacrifice to learned Brihaspati, but the demigod refused to accept the post because the king, being a human being, a man of this earth. He was very sorry for this, but on the advice of Narad Muni, he appointed Samvarta to the post and he was successful in his mission. Priesthood of his sacrifices. I didn't understand that. First, he wanted to offer the priesthood of his sacrifices to learned brothers, and he refused to accept the post. Oh, he wanted to use Brihaspati as a priest, head priest. Okay. Thus, the success of a particular type of sacrifice completely depends on the priest in charge. In this age, equally, all kinds of sacrifice are forbidden because there is no learned priest amongst the so-called Brahmanas who go by false notion of becoming sons of the Brahmanas without Brahmanical qualification. In the age of Kali, there for only one kind of sacrifice is recommended, Sankirtana Yagna, as inaugurated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 34. Um, we'll continue from 34 tomorrow. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya, Jai Nityananda, Jai Advaita Chandra, Jai Gaurabhakta. I don't know why I'm singing Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya.